Woof woof.
What's up, Jake? Who's hosting this thing? That's the one thing we did not talk about.
I don't think we have to. I think this is a mutually assured destruction here.
Jake is hosting the show.
No doubt. No doubt.
Jake is hosting the show. Hey, welcome to Bark After Dark. This is what did you call it earlier?
This is an exercise in self-indulgence, at least 100%. Tonight. This is 10 years in the making for those of you who are just tuning in. This is something that Jake Rowe and I have been talking about literally probably since the moment we met, which was about 10 years ago at this time. And it's kind of serendipitous that it would kind of fall in this window. But excited to be here, excited to do it. A lot more to come. Uncle Glenn Hartley checking in and saying the Jake and Jake show. Tennessee man's here. That's good. I'm glad he's watching. One of the best subscribers on the DawgsHQ channel. We appreciate him. But yeah, this is the first episode, and we're excited about this, man. Like we said, we tried to preview this, I think, in some previous episodes of the Georgia show. There will be guests to come. There will be people to talk to in the industry. There will be stories from the road. There will be the way Jake Rowe has described it, going back behind the velvet rope. That's what a lot of this is about. But tonight, it's just about an introduction and a welcome to everybody who is here. So we appreciate you being here, and we'll see how this ship sails on night one.
You know, and Roos, you talked about it, and obviously the reason we're doing this is because we want to, and we've always wanted to. But I think what allowed us to finally get it off the ground, because we talked about a lot of different things, right? We talked about Prime Country podcast,
working for the same company, probably.
Yeah, it's not, but it's not just work for the same company. We've worked for the same company for a little while now. We didn't start this right away.
Sure.
I think it was we finally kind of found a vein that we wanted to go through that kind of appeals to what I feel like is our audience. And I talked to a lot of people that subscribe to this site and to our site and to other sites, and a lot of them are interested in what we do. They're interested in the industry. They're interested in like, oh man, you know, when so, you know, all of this news is going down, like, what is your life like? I bet you're really busy. And I'm just kind of like, actually, man, one of the busiest times a year for us is the off season, because I have to work so hard to find stuff to write and to figure stuff out to write. It's mentally exhausting. So I'd much rather be during the season where my work is cut out for me. But, you know, just stuff like that. And then talking to the national writers about their kind of, I don't want to call it workflow because that sounds very, very, you know, mundane and just uninteresting, but just kind of what they go through. What stories did they break? Crazy stories about getting information and getting crossed up. We're going to talk to you guys about all that. I'm not holding anything back because I don't work for anybody really anymore. You know, kind of own part of the site, you know, over at DawgsHQ. So I don't really have anybody saying, oh, you can't tell that. You know, listen, I'm gonna dish on Chuma Edoga at one point. You know, like I love Chuma and he was a great kid. Chuma led me astray one time, and we're gonna talk about that. Laramie Tunsil. All right. I want to get into that at some point in the show. We're gonna
Roquan Smith thing. I guess we'll talk Roquan Smith at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake Roos's rise to fame, Roquan Smith. We'll talk about the phone conversations that happened around Roquan Smith and maybe bridges that were burned. Okay. We're going to get into all of it, and we got some interesting stuff to talk about. But the reason we're doing this also is I want to have guys that work in this industry, and I want to have guys on the Georgia beat, not because we want to sit there and get them to help us sell subscriptions or whatever. We're competing against them. They're competing against us. I hope we don't ever put them out of business, and I hope everybody's mouths gets fed. But I want folks to understand what it's like when me and Roos and Dean Legge talk, and me and Roos and Brandon Adams or Seth Emerson or Anthony Dasher or whoever we can get to come on, because some folks are going to need permission, and that's fine. But yeah, we're going to talk to the national guys. We want to talk to former Georgia players. And, you know, we're probably going to get into at some point during this episode, who would be our dream guest.
If you have suggestions, we're willing to take those as well. I can't promise we're going to get Quavo or Sam Jackson on here anytime soon, but I know that was suggested recently. So
yeah. Well, perfect segue here. Matthew C says, "What you drinking?" This is me tonight. This is Hacienda de Chihuahua. It's an Anejo tequila. It is very, very smooth. That is what I'm drinking tonight. I've had to, Roos, I love beer. You know I love beer. I can't really drink beer anymore, man.
I'm sorry to hear that. Why?
It's so bad. It does me so bad.
Yeah. You got to stay in practice with the suds, that's for sure. And I always do. And so I'm a beer guy. That's something that we'll talk about over the course of this for any number of reasons. But I've got a couple beers that I'm sipping on tonight. The first one is Appalachian Mountain Brewery's Hop Raindrop IPA. First time I've tried this, man. I'm trying to try something new each week, and I'm excited about that. But I got one in the reserve, which is an old standby, and that's a Hamm's. I had a fantastic PBR adjacent beer, just a good old crushable. So I'll be trying some new beers every week. I'm open to suggestions. You got to realize I do live in the Appalachian Mountains, so you got to take it easy on me. We don't have Total Wines up here. I don't make it down there all that often. So there will probably be some weeks of Corona and Heineken as well.
I need to answer my man Andy Stowe. And by the way, look at these comments, dude. I'm so flattered by the comments that we've got so many already. Andy, I don't own DawgsHQ. I own a piece of it. But you know, it's that's not what this is about. Obviously, it's a startup. I mean, I would probably losing money right now, to be honest with you. But I basically, it's just kind of from a who do you answer to type situation. And as long as I'm keeping it between the lines and not really embarrassing anybody, which is probably a smaller percentage of the time than I would really like to admit. Yeah, just keeping it between the lines, man. You own a piece of this thing, and we're really excited about it. And we're trending in the right direction. This YouTube channel is trending in the right direction. Got to brag on Wes. Got to brag on Palmer, who is producing this show. Those guys are two of the biggest workhorses in this entire business. And we're glad to have them on our team. But yeah, that's what we're drinking. This is what we want to talk about. And, you know, one of the things I think, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, we want to get into everybody's origin story that we talk to. We want to see where everybody started. I know some of the starts of the people that we've got lined up and we're going to talk to, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on too. But I don't know some of them, and I'm interested to see what we know on the air. You know, can we get into a Dennis Miller interviews Joe Dirt type situation on this show? Can we just go for hours and hours and captivate the nation? That's all I want to know. And I want to try that. That's all I care about. If I could do that once, it'd be better than winning the lottery.
No, I'm with you, man. That's such a big part of this job, right? Is interviewing people. And to some degree, well, not even to the largest degree, it's mostly people who do not want to be interviewed. Or are told do not give a good interview, or coached to not give a good interview. So I'm excited to talk to the people who do the interviewing and find out, you know, what the behind the scenes is on that, because that's kind of what led me into this business, was getting to know you and learning your story and just kind of following your coattails. And I think that speaking of origin stories, perhaps we should dive into yours, because I think I think it's fair. It's not only just fair to say, it's completely a fact that there would be no Jake Roos origin story on Bark After Dark without the Jake Rowe origin story.
I kind of see it as like I was at some point I was like Forrest Gump whenever he was running across the country, and then all of a sudden, like at some point, you kind of veered in and like started running beside me at one point. Yeah, so you know. I mean, I grew up in, you know, deep South Georgia, Pearson, Okefenokee Swamp, Puddin Creek. I'm talking about guys that they just paved the road near my house. I mean, grew up on the dirt roads, and came to Georgia after going to Valdosta State for a year and never left. You know, there's reasons for that, but I just never left. I've been here in August, I will have been here for 20 years. I, during college, made the decision that because of my circumstances, I was going to be a dad. I decided, all right, man, I got to get out of school as fast as I can and make money as fast as I can, benefits. So I went into education instead of journalism. That took me on a different path.
Decision to be a dad necessarily, but
what's that now?
I think the decision to be a dad fell in your lap a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't decide to be a dad. I had to decide to get into education because I was becoming a dad. But yeah, I had to, and at that time, nobody was hiring journalists. Nobody was hiring a writer, and I was in magazine journalism, and I loved it. And I was getting ready to get into Grady. I had applied, and I may have already gotten in. I can't even remember. I seem to remember getting a letter after the fact, but it just didn't matter. So I jumped in, got an education degree. Started working. I worked at Clark Central. I worked for a year. Roos and I actually didn't cross paths there. I don't think Roos had gotten out of school yet. And then I worked at Cedar Shoals for a few years. Coached some football there. Had a great time. Coached with Mike McDonald, who is now the head defensive coordinator at the Ravens. He was the wonder kid then. Everybody knew kind of he was cut from something a little bit different. He had a love for it, man. And some of these guys just do. They just do. There's smart people in this world, but there's people who just can't, stop thinking about it. And he's one of those. Like Palmer, when it comes to this job, like a dog and a tennis ball. Is what I tell Palmer about it. Palmer loves to write and he loves to create content. So right around the time I was fed up with teaching, I couldn't do it anymore. And I was looking for exit strategies, and I kind of did it multi-pronged. I got into grad school and decided I was going to get into Parks and Recreation, get my master's degree at Georgia. And then I also started trying to help some guys out over at UGAsports.com. Kip Adams, Roddy Nabolsi were running that site at the time. Anthony Dasher, Steve Patterson owned it. Guys, I didn't do a whole lot. I may have typed up a few interviews. I helped them get into contact with some coaches because, being a Georgia high school football coach, I had a Georgia high school football handbook. You could get a hold of a lot of those guys. And then those guys left for ESPN at the drop of a hat, right before Georgia played Boise State to begin the 2011 season. And boy, was that a letdown. And I was just standing there. And I was like, is this my exit strategy? So I started blowing Steve Patterson up. He had no choice but to kind of bring me on because at least people were kind of familiar with my name at that point. He also hired a girl named Emily Nerland, and this is part 2 of the miracle. Emily was from Canada. Emily was the full-time hire for Steve. I was going to be a part-time hire. I was going to have to continue teaching high school. And you want to talk about luck, man. And this is just complete dumb luck. I think I did a pretty good job that season, but tell you what, man, Emily was from Canada and she had to go back to Canada. She had to, I don't think she got so busy doing the job and being in school at Georgia. And this was a girl that went to Dartmouth, USC. She decided, she got behind on her paperwork to get her visa and ended up having to go back to Canada. And Steve had to hire me full time. So I quit my job teaching without a contract, becoming an independent contractor mid-year. And it's all worked out since. And I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if it just kind of took a leap of, all right, you're out there now, dude, you're going to have to work. If it was that or what, but I think I grew up a lot having to do that. And then a couple years down the line, I met Jake Roos. And I remember having the conversation with Jake Roos one day because I knew he is coming from the same spot and he was having some of the same teaching burnout that I was. And I said, hey, man, I got a plan. And you can tell him what the plan is.
The greatest heist of the century, I think, is what we were trying to pull off. I mean, just a swap out of nowhere. Jake and I met. I guess I should should we get into mine or do we want to just continue?
Yeah, no. This is where they pick up and they kind of run together.
Yeah. So I come from Blue Ridge. Well, I come from McKaysville, Georgia. I say Blue Ridge because most people know where Blue Ridge is. Most people don't know where McKaysville is, but it's only 15 minutes down the road, right on the Tennessee line. And that's what I call home. And so I came to Athens in 2005 for my freshman year. And I was pretty actively discouraged by everybody in my life to not chase my dreams. I wanted to be a theater major first and then a journalism major. Those were the two things that I really was passionate about. And everybody pretty much told me that you'd never make any money doing either of those things. And so I opted to go with a safer path, which was teaching. And I thought that that was what I was going to do. I spent a lot of time preparing to do that. Worked in schools all throughout college, and then ultimately got my English education degree. Graduated from Adderhold. I see my man Matthew C over there shouting that out. And I went. I came out. It was one of those things. It was so funny that like everybody was like, "Choose teaching. It's safe." And then the year I graduated teaching, I remember there were like 13 jobs for English teachers in the entire state of Georgia.
Yeah.
And most of them in places that I had no desire to ever visit, let alone live in. So I moved home for a year and lived at my mom's and substitute taught at Fannin County High School, where I graduated from. And I ended up back in Athens the next fall with a long-term sub gig at Winder Barrow High School, where I'd done my student teaching. And from there, it didn't look like it was going to work out much beyond that. So I worked for my dad for a couple of weeks, and I put in an application at Clark County Schools, and Dr. Hooker called me and said that they wanted to interview me. And I went to the interview kind of on a whim. I almost didn't go. I looked like a total jackass at my interview because I had cut my mustache into a Fu Manchu during November of that year. It was also the only interview that I did not wear a tie to. I was just kind of free balling it out there, man. I was really so burnt out on the whole process that I didn't care. And like a lot of things in my life, honestly, when I made it to that point, that's when it worked out for me. And so I came on halftime. I worked there that spring of 2011 at Clark Central. Worked there for about 3.5 years after that. And I was so burnt out. It was really crushing, man. It was.
Yeah, you were warming up McDonald's cheeseburgers for lunch.
How dare you? How dare you bring that up? You're pulling punches on show one. We did. It was a tough time, man. It really was. I was pretty down about the whole thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I met Jake, and I vividly remember our first meeting. Actually, we met at Normal Bar in Normal Town in Athens through our mutual friend Zach Thrower, the Throw Dog, and I remember I approached Jake and I said, "Hey, man, I follow you on Twitter. I see what you do. I love what you do. If you ever have need for an intern or somebody to write something to throw off, let me know." And he said, "Cool. Yeah, I'll take you up on it." And we really just became friends first. That wasn't really part of the conversation. And then that fall, everything kind of changed. And Jake started taking me around to games with him. The first game we ever covered together, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, was North Gwinnett at Norcross. Lorenzo Carter versus Mitch Hyatt. And you let me interview Mitch Hyatt. And that was the first interview I'd ever done. And it was Michael Carvel actually complimented my interview skills. I'll remember that forever. But yeah, and then from there, I taught for another few months. You decided you were leaving, and it was kind of a similar situation.
We're gonna get into the whole thing of it. Listen, I wasn't under contract at the time. I was working at UGA Sports when I did this, and the site was falling apart. Was Steve was going to lose the site. Maybe one day we'll get into that. That's the whole story in and of itself. But Steve Patterson was going to lose that site, and Roddy Nabolski's ended up taking it over and has done an incredible job. Roddy's Jake worked for Roddy. Roddy's a big guy in this business. I hope we're able to have him on someday, and he'll come on, and we'll definitely return the favor for him. But I was working for Steve. I didn't have a contract, and 24/7 approached me, Shannon Terry himself, and he said, "Hey, you want to come over? Rusty and Gentry think you'd be a good addition to the team." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Because I'd gotten tired of competing against Rusty. I'm tired of doing it right now, but I'll do it every day. We'll do it every day. It doesn't matter. He's awesome, and we love him too. But we'll compete, and hopefully we can have him on the show. But yeah, I was going over to 24/7. That's when I told Roos, I said, "Hey, I think I got a plan. I think I can get you out of teaching."
And a lot of this centered around for Christmas that year, I asked my dad for a plane ticket to go to San Antonio to the Army All-American game at the time. And he was kind enough to give me that for Christmas. And I think I took off like the first day or two back of teacher planning to go out to the Army Bowl and cover that. And that was I talk about a leap of faith thing. Like, that was, we swung pretty hard on that one, but
wasn't the only leap of faith taken that week.
No, it certainly wasn't. And no, I got back and, listen, to be fair,
there's things about that trip that'll never make it to public knowledge.
Of course, and shouldn't for the sake of many people involved. But my burnout was clear not only to me, but to other people. And I think
and just to let you know, so that you don't feel bad, mine was too.
Yeah.
I couldn't get there. I wasn't going to get there a moment too soon. I couldn't leave too early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was, listen, you didn't want me teaching your kids, not because I didn't care about them, because I did, but I just couldn't stomach it anymore. And you work with some great people and you teach some great kids, but you're just yanked around nonstop about, okay, this matters. Okay, this matters. Okay, this matters. And it's just something different all the time. And those who do it, kudos to you. You are an absolute freaking warrior.
A treasure. There's no question about it, man. I've so many friends that I still have from those days, and I'm so proud of them for sticking with it. I'm glad they did. And honestly, I wish that I could have to some degree, but it wasn't where I was supposed to be. I tell people all the time I was a much better mentor than I was a teacher.
Yeah.
Kids knew that, they had a safe place to talk and they could kind of come with whatever. And, I'll be quite frank with you.
I kind of want Palmer right now, though, to put on the banner down there, teaching whipped Jake and Jake's ass. Because it did. It beat mine, dude.
It drove me into the ground. I was in a dark place.
2 months in the summer, 2 weeks for Christmas, a week for Thanksgiving, fall break, Martin Luther King, Memorial Day. It don't matter. It wasn't enough time off. I wouldn't teach if you had me teaching 80 days a year.
I'll tell you this, you teaching burnout. Well done, Palmer, with the quick banner creation there. No, well, I tell people all the time too, the coming back from the holiday is almost worse.
Oh, God.
You spend most of your holiday thinking about when you will have to go back.
I used to cry like my dad was about to whip me.
Summer ending was like a 2-week mourning period for me. For sure. So anyway, we had a great,
I'll never forget our buddy Noah. Me and him were together and you were getting ready to go back to school, and Noah with his very distinct voice. Roos is about to have to go back to work. He's a mess. He's devastated. And I knew exactly how he felt too. Like that pre-planning.
I remember it all kind of came to a head. Everybody, they finally had a meeting with me, and the 2 department heads came and sat in my room, and they said, "Hey, we know that you're kind of cutting out early. We hear the kids are watching a lot of movies in your class," which was fact. And they said, "So what we're going to do is we're going to move you down the rung. We're going to make you teach 9th grade next year." I'd taught 12th grade up until that point. And they were going to put me in 9th grade and they were going to supervise me. And I knew that you were leaving, and I thought that I had a pretty good shot at the job at UGA Sports. And so I just said that morning, I said, "No, I'm good. I'm going to go do this other thing." and there was a lot of like everybody kind of sat back, and I was like, "Yeah, no, but I appreciate you guys having me. Like, thanks for everything." And sure enough, you moved on, and I was still doing some stuff behind the scenes. And I remember the day that you were hired at 247, another day I'll never forget, that I I was in yearbook class when the news broke that you had switched jobs, and I got a text from Dash, and he was like, "Hey, Rowe's gone, you're on." And so I got on my school computer and I just hopped on the vault and I just started posting, man. And you want to talk about getting tired of getting your ass whipped by Rusty, man. I was getting my ass whipped by you. I was getting my ass whipped by Rusty, Michael Carvel, Dean Legge, anybody who had a breath, I was getting crushed by. The only thing that I knew how to do was to try to show up as much as I could. And I could write HTML so my articles looked nice. And I had that going for me. So that was about it, man. And from there, it all led to the Roquan situation, the following. That was my first signing day on the beat. And that was that changed everything. And from there, it's just all kind of been up.
And I'll tell you what, man, Roos hit on it, and something I think we'll probably go over a lot over the course of our time is this beat. It's the SEC. It's worse than the SEC. It's like taking the top 5 or 6 teams in the SEC and just playing each other every week. It's round robin. It's ridiculous. It's like SEC baseball back in the day when the league was smaller and it was like 8 of the top 10 teams in the country were SEC teams. Everybody does a phenomenal job. You're not going to hear us talk trash about any of them, not one of them, because I respect them all. Even when they report things like the AJC, the thing that's going right now, I don't agree with the way they're going about it, but whatever. That's not Chip Towers doing that reporting. That's some other guy who thinks he's doing the right thing, and that's all we get to go on around here. But I do disagree with it, and I'd have a discussion with him on this show or any other platform about why I disagree with it, and I think we could do it probably with a lot of civility. All right, what? One question I want to ask you before we get into interviewing each other, because I want us to have a chance to share this, because I do want to talk a little bit of football on this thing. How close did you get before you were like, God almighty, this is different? How close did you get? Like, at what point were you just like, holy Jesus Christ?
In what regard? I mean, about the job?
I mean, as far as on the job, like how close did you get before you were just like, these people may not be human?
Oh man. I would say the Army Bowl probably was when I first realized it. When I got around everybody and I saw the frenzy, and it was just it was like a fever dream. The whole thing was, for somebody who'd never been through something like that, it was unbelievable almost that it was happening in the way that it was. People were moving frantically and were excited, and just it was a bizarre thing to be a part of. And I was with people that I'd never could have imagined seeing myself in a room with. I followed Chad Simmons from the time I was 20 years old, and suddenly I'm sitting here like looking at him. I didn't talk to him, and now he's a guy I work with, I talk to frequently, and it's hard to believe. But yeah, that was when I realized it was all very different, and I loved it, and I developed a passion for it, and I decided to chase it. And since then, my passions have changed a lot. But I've never really lost my love for the industry and the people, especially in the industry. The kids have changed a lot. NIL has changed things a lot. It's a different world in that respect. But for the most part, it's been a dream. And I remember I told Roddy one time, I think it was when we were walking into LSU back in the day. And I said, if I never got to do this again, I would never feel any ill will because I got to do it once.
Yeah. I got to see a lot of things through this job that I wouldn't have gotten to see otherwise. It's a really cool job. We're really lucky to have been at the right place in the right time to do this. And that's not to say that I don't complain about it sometimes. When we got bait and switched in Miami last year, that sucked because it was already going to suck that we were there for 2 15-minute periods, and then they took those away. And honestly, you were also sitting there like, should I go early? Should I not go early? Then you just felt duped by it. But, we made the best of it, going on a little fishing trip. Hopefully we can have one of those guys that was on that fishing trip. Palmer was on both fishing trips we ever went on. One was a dud. One was amazing. One we just drank a lot of beer, or I drank a lot of beer. And then the other we didn't drink any beer, but we caught a lot of fish. But yeah, we all hang out together on the beat. You know, it's
that's the thing.
It's politics and pro wrestling is what it is.
That's part of what this show is. I hope about is like the idea that, like, listen, you know, people can think whatever they want about, you know, why I chose to move to DawgsHQ. It wasn't because I didn't like the people that I worked with. I love those guys. I respect those guys. I love Rusty. I love Chad. I love Dean. You know, Brooks is a great guy. I mean, these are all people that I've run into over the years and that I've developed a healthy respect for, and in most cases, a friendship with. You know, we see each other out and we spend time together, and it looks competitive from the outside. It's not nearly as nasty as it seems.
It's not nasty at all. It's really just competitive is what it is. It's really good, clean competition. And we kind of get after each other a little bit, try to, you know, beat them to some stuff. We beat them to some stuff today. We got Marvin Jones. Feel real good about that. Marvin Jones. I don't feel good about Marvin Jones being hurt. Okay. But I will say this, for those of you tuning in, little Georgia scoop on Marvin Jones. Guys, he came in, as far as I know, with this injury, or at least as partially this injury. He's been dealing with this thing since preseason camp. The fact that number 7, true freshman number 7, Marvin Jones, practiced and played all year long should make you optimistic about his future, because he put it on the line. They had to limit him in practice because his shoulder was coming out. I mean, he's a labrum issue. He was sublexing like Mr. Perfect was suplexing. He was, listen, we hope to get into some professional wrestling stuff around here. I mean, I'll go ahead and tell you right now.
I can assure you.
Is the Ultimate Warrior dead? He's dead, right? Yeah. That would be my dream guy I have on here. Kyle Brandt kind of acts like he's the from the NFL Network. He kind of acts like he's the Ultimate Warrior guy. I'm the original Ultimate Warrior guy. Okay. Kyle Brandt don't know. I mean, I almost cursed in a way I shouldn't curse on this show. Kyle, he don't know nothing about the Ultimate Warrior like I do. Did he have an Ultimate Warrior wrestling buddy back in like 1991? Probably.
I had the Hogan and Savage.
Yeah, I had Ultimate Warrior. But yeah, we'll get into all that stuff. But love this job, love this beat. Roosh, let's get into some questions. I'll let you start off since you want to interview me, because I really don't know what you're going to do here, and I'm scared.
Well, and I love you too, buddy. I mean, like I said, listen, I've got to say this since it's show 1 and we're talking about origin stories. I owe everything that I have become to Jake for putting me into this position. You put me into this position. Roddy was as great of a mentor as I could have possibly ever had in this business, but you know, and thank God that he kept me on when he didn't have to, certainly. But you really helped me out. You threw me a lifeline, and I really appreciate it, man.
Man, you got it, dude. I'm glad you're here. We've had a lot since. We're gonna have a lot more fun together now that we play.
All right. So we're gonna interview all these people that come on, right? We're gonna ask them some standard questions, but we decided as part of tonight's kickoff that we would interview each other. So I'm gonna open mine up here with my first question for Jake Rowe, and something that you may also learn about me over the course of this is that I'm a spiritual person.
Oh God!
And so I'm going to say my first question for you, Jake Rowe, is assuming that reincarnation is real. What do you hope to come back as?
Same guy. I want to come back as myself, and I'm gonna listen. I am a fool about my children. Okay, like I have my son at home all day today because strep's been tearing its way through our house, and I have my son at home all day today, and that dude runs through my door and he jumps in my lap and he says, "Daddy tax," and the daddy tax is just he has to come up and like give me a hug or you know just give me some cuddles or some loves or whatever. So I love my kids, but if I got a chance to be reincarnated and come back, I'd come back and have no kids. I would come back. I would travel the entire world. I would have had an entire life to live with my children. I love them very much. They can be somebody else's kids in the other life. They would probably want to come back as like a turtle and a sloth. So that's cool for them. But for me, I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit every continent. And I don't know. I'll probably be fatter, to be honest with you. I'm going to come back and I don't care what it takes. I'm going to live the life of Andrew Zimmern and Anthony Bourdain, pre whatever, and go travel the world and eat. Because that is something that Jake Roos and I have completely, utterly bonded over, is our love of food.
No doubt.
And we do love to find a good meal. We've eaten at some pretty iconic places together. St. Elmo's.
Yes.
Hyman's over in Charleston, even though that's a tourist trap, we know, but still pretty good.
So. Love the heat, though.
Love the heat. Love the heat.
Well, at least we know now that your kids will have something to show in therapy when they go.
I love them to death. I wouldn't trade them for anything in this life.
I hear you.
Yeah. I became a dad real young. Okay.
I understand.
All right, Roos, I got one simple for you, and it's also family related. You think you're ever going to get married?
I kind of doubt it, man.
Yeah.
I don't think so. It's I've had some great relationships. I got a great relationship right now, and but there's a part of me that does enjoy my me time, and so we'll see. I don't know, man. I never say never to anything. That's kind of been my firm stance. It's like, what do they say? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like when you be definitive about anything, you can't say that. So we'll see, man. And maybe it's in the cards for old Roos.
I hate to pull rank here, but since you're talking to your boss, technically you should probably say you're married to the job.
Yeah, right. No, I'm married to the grind.
Yeah, married to the grindstone.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see. That's it. That's something for the future. And Lord have mercy, if I'd tried to predict my future, boy, I would have lost every dollar I ever had. So I don't know about that one. Let's see. All right. So Jake Rowe, the 3 albums you've listened to the most in your life.
Well, I mean, number one. Number one's Fairweather Johnson.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Hootie and the Blowfish Classic.
And listen, that's the Cracker Review album is the one everybody's crazy about. Fairweather Johnson connects with me in a way that no album ever has. I don't know if it just came along at the right part of my life, but it's probably and honestly, I'm not a Hootie fanatic. I've never seen them live. I love their music, but it's probably Fairweather Johnson, number one, and Cracker Review, number two. My cousin and I, Christopher Cravey, shout out, Florida fan. We used to ride down the strip at Fernandina Beach on junior, senior weekend and any other time we could go, because I lived an hour and a half, 2 hours from Fernandina Beach. We used to ride that strip, and he had a couple of Kicker 10s in his truck, and we would listen to Hold My Hand and let that bass drop. And boy, over and over, we thought we were something. We thought we were something, dude. I sat in the passenger seat of that thing because my truck I had like a small truck and he had like a GMC, he had like a Sierra. And I had my right arm was so much darker than my ride. What are we doing? We're at the beach, just wasting gas, riding up and down the street like a couple of just morons, meatheads. And a girl worried about us, but we were thumping that bass to that Hold My Hand back in like 2001, 1999. Yeah, what an awkward time. I look back and I cringe. I got to go do that era over again. That's one of the reasons I'd come back as a human, to be honest with you. And then I don't know, man. Number 3, I love country music and I always have, but I would say number 3 probably has came much more recent in life, and it's probably Southeastern by Jason Isbell.
Oh, good.
I've listened to that album. I had a friend, a kid named Carlton Taft, who several years ago took his own life. And there's a song on that album that makes me think about him from time to time. And I enjoy that. I enjoy thinking about him because we had a lot of good times together, and I hate to kind of make a bummer out of this. But yeah, probably, but more than just that. I mean, Jason Isbell is awesome. He's an incredible lyricist. And, I think we both kind of share that together. Is we may like music to a different level. You probably like it a lot more than I do. But at the same time, like we do kind of dig lyrics, probably the writer in both of us, even though you're much better at it than I am. I like Jason Isbell a lot too. So I've also listened to that Chris Stapleton Traveler album a lot too. I've sung that album to my kids to get them to sleep many times. I had my oldest, my 7-year-old daughter. I would just, she had colic when she was little. She was so bad. The only thing I could do is flip that out. I would throw the Traveler album on and flip my phone, just throw my phone into the car carrier with her and just be like, God, just be quiet. And she loved it. She'd listen to it, still sing Tennessee Whiskey to her this day. So anyway.
Great choices.
Yeah. I mean, just give me your number one. What's your number one? Not even one of my questions, just a bonus.
I'm gonna say probably the album I've listened to most in my life, because I used to listen to it every single time in college that I drove to and from Athens, and I've listened to it 100,000 times since then. Is Third Eye Blind's debut album.
Yeah,
I've listened to that album.
Self-titled, right?
Self-titled. I have worn that album absolutely out. It was just like a perfect album for that time in my life. And I listened to it like crazy. Garth Brooks' Double Live is up there for sure.
I won that in a White Elephant Christmas game.
A great choice.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then there's a lot of like a lot of the stuff I listened to back then, though, was a lot of emo music. I was into Dashboard Confessional really heavily, Brand New, Bright Eyes. Matthew C over here talking about U2. I'm a huge U2 fan. I'm a big music nerd for sure, and I'm always looking for new stuff. So, but yeah, I would say Third Eye Blind has definitely got a shot at the title for me.
Yeah, that is a good album, and I listened to that. Was the same era that I kind of grew up listening to the whole Pop Rocks thing. And dude, you flip on XM and you flip Pop Rocks. I mean, you can just, like 3 out of 4 are just bangers. I do love that era, but Roos and I also, it's funny that we didn't bring up any of this, and I think it was because we listened to everything. We are prime country fanatics. We've taken we've taken some road trips together, and we've discussed the ins and outs of why Indian Outlaw. You just don't hear it like you used to. There's a reason. And also how much, excuse my French, how much bullshit it is.
Yeah,
because
sure.
it is Tim McGraw, whoever wrote that song's a liar. Whoever wrote the Indian Outlaw, Deer
come
Buffalo.
Come on this podcast and defend yourself.
There is
no way you were shooting that thing from 100 yards.
Yeah, with a hickory bow. We're not talking about a PSC compound here, brother. We're talking about a hickory bow. And listen, I do love Rush, but I have not listened to albums all the way through of Rush. I'm a big time Rush fan. That is
my dad's a huge Rush fan.
Yeah. Get a little Neil Peart up in you.
I'm seeing some mentions of Nirvana, Bush, Stained, STP. Nirvana was probably the band that had the largest effect on my life. No band has ever changed my life.
You know who's a big Nirvana. STP fan? You know who's a big Rusty Mansell, big STP fan.
I can see it, man. Yeah. I can see it. One of my classic stories about my dad is he used to go into Radio Shacks and grab the megaphone and go like into the megaphone.
Dude, I can picture Rusty Mansell with a headband, aviators, sleeveless T-shirt, cut off jeans, and Interstate Love Song.
My man Woof 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 over here mentioning Tom T. Hall. Now you're getting into my that old school, singer-songwriter country. I'm big into that. Marty Robbins I've been into a lot lately. I've been into some weird stuff lately.
Yeah.
Let's do a lot of Bjork this week.
I do flip on some Rush occasionally when I'm working at your house. We got to get moving though. Roos, most memorable halftime show you've ever witnessed?
I would have to say the Stratford Academy in Charleston, South Carolina.
It wasn't Stratford Academy. It was
or what was Stratford?
It was just Stratford High School. Yeah, it was Jacob Park.
It was Jacob Park's high school. Yeah. That one's up there for sure. I was not prepared for their Willy Wonka theme for a number of reasons. Yeah. I wasn't prepared for them. I will say when Southern came to play
that was a good one.
Georgia was an incredible one though. That was, and that game, it's such a shame. That game gets so overshadowed by the tragic injury of Devin Gales in that one. And which I was standing about 6 feet away from where that all happened. And it was really horrible to watch that all play out. But that was an incredible one for sure. I got to tell you, I love the Redcoats. I'm a huge Redcoats guy. Shout out. They do a great job. I do not think the Spell Georgia cheer is one of the most exciting things on earth. I think that it's overhyped, and maybe I'm not saying drop it, but we got to quit overhyping it over the loudspeaker.
What
the Frisbee catching dogs, always a classic. Also, too, I will say, shout out the basketball game, the girl with the plates.
Yeah, Red China.
Dude, unbelievable. Red Panda, isn't it?
Red Panda. Red China Panda.
Yeah,
China Panda, Red Panda.
Red Panda is incredible, dude.
I don't know what her name is, but yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, that's unbelievable to me. Like, I'm watching superhuman basketball players out there, and I'm like, forget what they're doing. How is she doing this many plays?
Yeah, she's so great that you see sports writers just bring her up from time to time. Red Panda's here tonight.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
They're just so fired up. It's like that dude that I don't know. I was about to get into a deep dark Twitter hole. Roos and I have recently found out we have one of the same habits, which was we flip on Facebook, we find the reels, and then we just scroll reels for hours. When we should probably be sleeping or working ahead and getting some content ready for the next day. All right, you're up.
All right, I'm up. All right. This one I think should be pretty easy for you. Jake Rowe's perfect steakhouse meal is what?
A ribeye. Got to have a ribeye. I'm not necessarily a bone-in guy. It just gets a little bit too much. Now, I have at as fine establishment as St. Elmo's picked up the bone and just eat the rest of the steak off the bone. I don't care. Huh?
I seen it.
Yeah, I don't really care. I mean, like, if I'm going to pay $60 a la carte for a steak, I'm going to eat it however I want to. And that's what the bartender told me before the Notre Dame game, the Friday before Notre Dame. Yes, Senator Blutarski, by the way, on Bark After Dark, we would love that. Senator, if you can reach out to us, your people need to talk to our people.
Bring it on.
We'll leave the lobbyists out of it. It's definitely a ribeye. Listen.
What temp?
Oh, it's somewhere between rare and medium rare. If it's rare, I don't mind. If it's medium rare, I don't mind. I've got a big window there, but I don't, and I'll eat it if it's overcooked, man, to be honest with you. I mean, beef's beef. If it's good beef, it's good beef. I just, David Pascal, who has covered Georgia for a long time and also one of my favorite people, we got to have him on as well.
We absolutely.
That's the first time I've thought of that. Let's write this down. David Pascal is a character, and he had me on his radio show one time. And I was on the way to Nashville to cover the Vanderbilt game. And I said, well, David, first thing I'm going to do when I get there is I'm going to get a little piece of beef in my belly. And he still walks up to me this day. He goes, hey, man, you got some beef in that belly? Pascal, the Cookie Monster, producer Palmer's telling us, David Pascal once ate 9 cookies in the first quarter of a Kentucky game. David Pascal's also 5'11", 140 pounds. So he's definitely on the lean side.
So I got a light, medium rare ribeye so far.
Yeah, but before the meal, I want an Outback or a Longhorn house salad with Thousand Island dressing. I don't care how nice the steakhouse I'm at. I need that salad because that salad right there is home to me. That's like going to Phillips 76 restaurant on Highway 82 in Pearson, hitting the salad bar, getting that Thousand Island dressing. That was the best part about going to the steakhouse. Okay. And then as far as the thing goes, whatever tater they got, man. I mean, if it's good mashed potatoes, if it's good steak fries, I'm a big fan of the Orada crispy crowns here at the house when I make them, the Chick-fil-A tater tots. Oh yeah, different dipping sauces. So yeah, I'm big into that, but I do love a good mashed potato as well. So loaded baked potato also works well. There's also a thing I have recipe. Write this down, folks. A cup. All it takes is a couple tablespoons of butter, cup of rice, 1 can of beef consomme, 1 can of French onion. Throw it in a thing. Bake it in the oven up for 40 minutes on 400. My friends call it Rowe rice because I told them about the recipe and they love it. But we eat that a lot with steak as well. So, but I do love beef. I've got about
cream spinach.
not a cream spinach guy.
Oh, I'm a big cream spinach guy, man.
No, I'd rather have some mushrooms of some sort.
Okay.
Psilocybin.
What do you do? Okay, now what do you what are you drinking? What are you drinking at the steakhouse?
Well, I mean, we've been there. We've been to Oak Steakhouse in Nashville, and I'm kind of all over the place. Let's start out with a whiskey neat. Probably a good, if we're going to a nice steakhouse, let's start with a whiskey neat. And then we'll switch in, we'll cool off the chest a little bit with a good cold beer. And then once the meal comes, good red wine, preferably a Malbec.
I'm a big red wine guy with my steak. Gotta have one. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not a steak guy. You're a much bigger steak guy than I am.
Yeah.
But I appreciate a good steak.
And listen, I love you. I love you, and you got a good palate, but you're kind of a basic guy when it comes to steak too. You like the fillet.
I do. I'm just not into big chunks of meat, to be honest with you. I'm more into the sides. I'm a big sides guy.
Yeah, and I'm in it. I go to a steakhouse understanding that when I'm done with this, it's going to be like I just ran a mile.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll actually need to run a mile, but I'll feel as if I needed.
I am not a tin. I am going to fight Dylan Brooks because he just said Roos loves the chicken tendies. I am not a chicken tender person. Jake Rowe will tell you that right now. I am definitely not a chicken tender person. I am an adventurous eater. I love everything. Steak's just not my thing.
Yeah. That's very much true. Scott eats a lot of chicken though. It's just not tenders.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And this dude's way more adventurous than I am. This dude's eating all sorts of like backwoods, ancient Indian recipe stuff that I can't do. Like I can't do Indian and most Thai and stuff like that. That stuff kind of messes with me. But I'll eat any seafood you throw in front of me. Octopus, it doesn't matter, and we'll eat it raw.
Fry it and throw it into Jake Rowe's face. Tell him it came from the ocean, and he will eat all of it.
I mean, you don't have to fry it. You can blacken it. It doesn't really matter. You raw. I mean, whatever. I mean, Ruth saw me house about 4 dozen raw oysters one time at Two Dude Seafood.
Oh boy, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we eat. That's one of the things we first thing, and I've one of the things I'll get into eventually is I've got routines when I go to certain places on the road. Like Palmer will tell you, I've got a set routine on what I'm doing when I go to Jacksonville, Florida, because that's the only thing that makes that trip bearable anymore. Because Jacksonville sucks.
No, untrue. You still got you still got Brian's Giant Subs, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got to do those things to make it tolerable.
Oh yes, absolutely. There's no question about it. I thought you were just saying Two Dude Seafood. I was like, no, you still got that.
But I will say, I flew to Florida last year, and that replaces. If I can't go to Brian's Giant Subs on the way down in Dublin, then flying's a good. That's a good.
If Brian's Giant Subs wants to sponsor this show, please reach out. We will
hype you.
You don't even have to pay us. Just give us some swag or something, man. Mail me one of those sandwiches and I'll talk about it on the air.
Yeah. Brian's Giant Subs, Dublin, Georgia. Go check it out. Get the Brian special. Tell them we sent you. All right, Ruth, not nearly as adventurous as you on this particular question. Who is the best player you've ever seen with your own 2 eyes?
Ooh, boy, that's a good question. I mean, I've got some favorites. I mean, I've got some people that I really loved and enjoyed watching play, but best of all time that I've ever personally seen up close. Oh gosh, that is tough, Jake. No, actually it just came to me. It was Darnell Washington in high school. Watching Darnell Washington was the size that he was. You
just pulled the Mel Tucker. What you just did, you just pulled the Mel Tucker, because when Mel Tucker talked about Stetson Bennett, he said Stetson Bennett's full name 3 times before ever launching into a sentence. And you just did the same thing.
I'm buying time here. No, Washington was absolutely insane to watch at a high school level because he was as big then as he is now. And to watch a guy
probably a little heavier, maybe even a little heavier.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But to watch a guy that size play against high school kids, I mean, it was like it was a joke, man. I mean, it was ridiculous. I think I took that picture if I'm not mistaken. But it was menacing, dude. It was like watching a 30-year-old man play against 5-year-old kids. I mean, he was just absolutely swatting people. He did whatever he wanted to the entire game. And I don't know that I've ever seen anybody on any level do it the way that Darnell Washington did. There have been some other great ones for sure. Guys are shouting guys out. Roquan Smith, AJ Green was amazing. I remember Todd Gurley housing the opening kickoff against Buffalo in his freshman season and being like, "Whoa, who is this guy?"
Do you remember the night that Todd Gurley housed the opening kickoff after coming back from that suspension against Auburn?
I do. And I remember actually, and you can go back and ask Noah about this, I told Noah what was going to happen. I said the most Georgia thing possible would be for Todd Gurley to return from the suspension, play one game, and blow his knee out. And he sure as shit did. And I sat in salsa that night.
Yeah, I was. You knew I wasn't going to let that get. Yeah, Roos was sitting between myself and Paul Meharry from UGA Sports. Roos and Paul Meharry working together. Roos went and made himself a big plate of chips and salsa at halftime, and then came right back in and sat in it.
Yeah, not one of my
and we're talking about like the
Conte.
Yeah,
yeah,
with the big chunks of onion and pepper in it, and it's just like falling off
from my ass.
just all of them. I would say Todd Gurley at the college level. At the high school level, I saw Champ Bailey and I saw Charles Grant, and I would have to give the nod to Charles Grant. I watched Charles Grant break off an 80-yard touchdown run, come up with a hamstring. The guy ran him down, and he just stiff-armed him, snapped his head back, and then the kid went to get up to try and run after him again, and then just kind of like fell down again and never tried because he didn't want to go get embarrassed again. And then Charles Grant didn't come out in the second half.
At the college level, I will say probably for me personally, I mean, Gurley was incredible, and it's probably Gurley, but outside of him, like two guys that I just loved playing, and were probably like my two favorite Georgia players when I was in school, or even past that. Alec Ogletree was so great to watch. I loved his game. And then Greg Blue just destroyed people, man. And I loved everything about it. You just don't get to watch a lot of guys play like that anymore. And it was so cool to see that. So I would definitely say those guys get nods, at least in terms of guys that I just flat out enjoyed watching their game.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, yeah. We going for round 4. You tell me.
Yeah, let's go round 4.
All right, round four.
I mean, hey, listen, these folks can stop listening to us anytime they want. Okay.
All right. So this is one that I hope that we're going to get to ask some future guests as well. But I am really curious because I don't think you ever answered this for me. What is the worst hotel room you have ever stayed
in? This is not hard.
It's never hard. It's never hard. That's never why it's a great question.
I stayed. Well, so okay, yeah. That is kind of hard. Okay, I'll go with the worst hotel I've ever stayed in, and then the worst hotel I've ever stayed in on the job. Worst hotel I've ever stayed in was in Boulder, Colorado, 2010. I went out to see the Georgia-Colorado game, and me and 9 other people stayed in a Roadway Inn. Now, it made it easier that there was 9 of us in there because I didn't feel like a complete loser degenerate. But you know how these towns gouge for hotel rooms.
Sure.
When you go in, and I think that thing was like $330 a night. And I had a buddy, Nate Leckahall. He's a real good friend of mine. Got married here a couple years ago. Just welcomed his first child into the world in September, I believe it was. And he lived out. He was from Aurora, Colorado. He was from the Denver suburbs, and we went out there to spend time with him. Stayed at the Roadway. Dude, the Roadway Inn was awful. Okay, there's pictures of me. I needed some chemical help to go to sleep that night. It was. I think the floor was cleaner than the bed, which is where I slept. Worst hotel I stayed at on the job was Memphis for the Liberty Bowl. When Kirby and company went to TCU, I was a good boy. I was a good boy back then. I was like, hey, listen, I'll save the money. I'll save the company as much money as I can on these hotels. That was the last day of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I stayed at the Holiday Inn and it was like $108 a night. And I was like, man, Holiday Inns are good. Well, this one was under construction. And not only was it under construction, I feared for my life every single time I made it to that parking lot. So one of those two.
Mine's easy. It's why I came up with the question, because I'll never forget it. It was Houma, Louisiana. I had traveled down to see Mason Smith, and I was staying in a Red Roof Inn. And I got in. My other worst one would have also been a Red Roof Inn in Jacksonville, but the one in Houma, I got in. I drove over from my dad's house in Gulf Shores. He took me to the Mobile airport, and I rented a car. I drove it to Houma, which was about a 3.5-4 hour drive. I got in at about 2 in the morning, and I had to go meet the kid at like 6 or 7 in the morning. It was early, and I got into the room. There was visible trash. There was blood all over the sheets. When I pulled the comforter back, so I just put the comforter back and I slept on top of that. And then the next morning, I plugged the hairdryer in and it caught on fire. So that was easily the worst one. Not even close.
Okay, let's go ahead and book in this thing. Nicest hotel you've ever stayed in?
Oh, easy for me. It was in Vegas. I was like 21 years old, and we had rented. I was 21. I was substitute teaching, and I'd saved my money all year, and we went out to stay in Vegas. It was me and Noah and a couple of our other friends, and we went to at the time the newly opened PH Towers, and we got there, and a couple of our buddies, their dads were doctors, and so they used their father's names to book the hotel. And they upgraded us, and I'll never forget. I mean, there was like 6 people. It was like a 3-person room or something like that. There was like 6 of us, 6 or 7 of us. We take the elevator all the way up to the 41st floor, which was the highest floor. We start walking out this hallway, and we realize that down at the end of the hallway, there's a double door. And we're checking the numbers. We're checking the numbers, and we're like, none of these rooms are. And we're like, it suddenly dawns on us, and it's like the double door is where we're headed. And it was like out of the real world, man. Drop down screens, views of the strip, hot tub overlooking the strip, in-suite dishwasher, kitchenette, it was bananas, dude. It was one of the great weeks of my life was staying in that room with those friends and having that time. Not even a thought for me.
For the longest time for me, it was the Hyatt Regency. I went there on a Y Club trip when I was 17 years old, and they left the key to the mini bar, and me and my buddy immediately got into it. And I'm over there just throwing back Grey Goose shooters. Then my buddy just grabs this card and he starts looking at it. And then he just goes, it's like Drew Carey on The Price is Right, Bob Barr. He just throws it. And I said, what was that all about? And he goes, you just drank $60 worth of liquor. I was, oh my God. So we had to fill them up with water bottles and get some super glue. And we went to the CVS across the way in Atlanta, got some super glue, glued the little tabs back up to them to make them look like they were sealed. We never heard a word about it, which was awesome.
Hell yeah.
But since then, I would say we had a similar situation where we got upgraded to a suite at the Omni in Jacksonville on the river. I believe it was the Omni. But we ended up with like 13 people in there one year whenever I was a student. So, and I had just had knee surgery. I'd had my quad tendon repaired. And I was kind of part-time working not in this industry. So that one was a cool room, but it wasn't the cool experience. The Lowe's Vanderbilt Hotel is the bomb. And when I worked at 24/7 Sports, we had an Amex Connection CBS travel agency where for some reason that hotel was always like $160 a night when we wanted to book it. And I booked it every single time I could. And I've had some good times downstairs in that bar and, good meals at that place. Lowe's Vanderbilt Hotel. Awesome. I've never splurged real big for an hotel room, though. Also, I will say this, the JW Marriott last year for the national championship game.
Very nice.
Very nice hotel.
Thank
And
you.
one of the most killer atmospheres I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Thank you to the JW Marriott for letting my friend Matt Wright sleep on the floor. We didn't ask them about that, but we just did it, and I appreciate everybody who paid for that.
Listen, if you went to the national championship game, if you went to the first of these back-to-back championships by Roos and I's alma mater, you went to the JW Marriott, any of those nights leading up to the national championship game, you had a good time.
No
you
question.
Had a good time. Because let me tell you something. There were some days I didn't feel like having a good time, and I had a good time. Absolutely. So it was incredible. Just like this show has been, it's been fun, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg. We got a lot more to come. We didn't even get through all of our questions. Next week, tentatively, because I always pause to do this because I know everybody's got lives, and we got, COVID and strep and flus and everything like that going around. Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated, one of my favorite people in this entire freaking world. Okay. Ross is the most, if there's anybody in this business that shouldn't be down to earth, it is like 6'3", 220-pound, looks like he could play tight end in college or defensive end in college football right now, outside linebacker. Ross Dellinger. He's a phenomenal writer. He breaks a ton of stories. If there's a guy that should be unapproachable, all right, he looks like a dipshit there. But if there is a guy that would not be relatable in this industry, it would be Ross. He's totally relatable, totally good guy. He's going to have a drink with us next Saturday. Don't come on Saturday, come on Monday. Yeah. Ross is supposed to join us next week. We got Andy Staples lined up for March. And we're filling in the gaps from there. But those are two of our favorites, so we're going to talk to them. And if you can, sneak some little encouragement to the guys in this business, in this beat. Tell them, hey, we want to see you come on the Bark After Dark. We're not going to get into DawgsHQ versus Dog Post versus Dogs 24/7. We just want to talk and hang out and have a good time.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys, so much for listening and for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.